Chapter 241, Cleansing the Ling Family. However, this way of doing things left Third Master Yu extremely unsatisfied. Thus, he suggested to Ling Tian to allow all 5 of them to go against him alone. Ling Tian happily agreed, and thus began the disheveled days of Third Master Yu. While the sparring gave him endless joy, it also made him extremely bedraggled. Because of Third Master Yu's profound cultivation and internal energy, the 5 brothers were unable to do a thing to him. However, their mischievous minds soon found a way around it, which was to target his clothes. From then on, Third Master Yu had to seriously stress the fact that they were not allowed to lay a finger on his clothes, at the expense of him using his full strength against them. After all, nobody would like having the cloth around their buttocks completely torn off. Ling Tian was always stamping the ground in anger after every battle, but he couldn't do anything either. Ling Tian was already at the Xiantian realm and had immense internal energy storage. Together with the fact that he was already familiar with the fighting styles of the 5 kids, he would definitely be able to annihilate them without paying the ultimate price if they were to clash head-on. However, he was also painfully aware that the other party had the exact same thoughts. To fight all out and clash head-on, the 5 of them had the utmost confidence of putting Ling Tian at an absolute disadvantage. If it were an assassination, Ling Tian even felt that only 3 of them would do, and at most one of them would sacrifice their life to seal the deal. After all, the 5 of them were originally coached in assassination techniques with little training on fighting head-on. After repeated battles, Ling Tian began to really appreciate their talents, and hence would rather be on the losing side than injure them. The 5 of them naturally felt it, and hence also reciprocated by not using any killing moves. However, for the originally disadvantaged Third Master to give leeway, it would be more difficult than ascending to the heavens for him to win this battle. When experts exchange pointers, the slightest error can allow a blow to land. While the 5 of them couldn't compare to the Third Master individually and were unable to pierce the internal energy surrounding his skin, that didn't mean that they weren't able to give him superficial wounds. This few days, Third Master Yu looked as though he had mysteriously developed bruises on his face, with his head resembling that of the Sakyamuni Buddha one, let alone his clothes remaining intact. Ling Tian originally told Ling Tian to inform them not to go overboard, but who would have expected that the Third Master Yu would grumble about it but not actually care about it? In the end, he still stayed his hand at crucial times, not even caring about his clothes at those points. After a while, Ling Tian could only helplessly turn a blind eye to it. Because Ling Qi and the group were already close to making breakthroughs, under Ling Tian's coaching, they all made significant progress. This was further facilitated by Ling Tian's torture every time they returned back to their base, so who would dare to take it easy? This also resulted in Ling Tian's increasing unease when battling against the 5 of them. In the previous few days, Ling Tian was extremely pleased with his success, but what made him speechless was that the 5 brats improved as quickly as he did. Third Master Yu could still keep his clothes intact in the first few days of sparring, but recently, he was forced to return with fewer and fewer strips of cloth on his body. Every day, Third Master Yu would start the battle with a holler, "This Third Master is here. Little brats, hurry and meet your maker." After the battle, he would end with a resentful statement saying, "You brats have improved again, not bad, not bad. This Third Master will settle you the next day." Then he would arrange the strips of cloth that still remained on his body before running off. This sort of attitude showed that he was truly a martial arts fanatic. There was, however, one point that the 6 of them found incredibly funny. Even after being ridiculed and laughed at by the people of Smoky Thea Tower whenever he walked in after a battle, he didn't have the thought to take off his robe and put it elsewhere before starting the battle. He would merely tuck his robes in his belt before starting the fight. Ling Qi once asked if they should remind him about setting aside his robes, but Ling Qi was beaten up by the rest of them for this suggestion. The reason? It would make the battle much less interesting. When Ling Tian heard the news, he froze on the spot for a good few seconds, before laughing so hard that he had to hold onto his stomach. He was deeply respectful to Third Master Yu's mental willpower, as he was able to withstand the glances of everyone in Smoky Thea while looking like a monkey every day. This wasn't sarcasm. Ling Tian had asked himself, and he was sure that even he wouldn't be willing to allow the five of them to be so unbridled as to do the same to him. Because of that, he couldn't help but be filled with respect for Third Master Yu. It was also because of this that Yu Bingyan, heartbroken at the state of her uncle when he came back to Smoky Thea Tower every day, ran over to Ling Tian and squeezed out a huge purple bruise on Ling Tian's body. Ling Tian could only shout out his innocence. After all, it was her uncle that willingly chose this path. In front of the Ling family courtyard, more than 100-odd tents were built. All the business partners of the Ling family were standing around them respectfully as they waited for the arrival of the Ling family members. All the people here could be considered major partners in the Ling family business. They were well fed and dressed richly, so how could they lower themselves to squeeze into a crude tent? Especially since there was the opulent villa in front of them, but the Ling family actually didn't allow anyone to enter. All the people were furious to the point of exploding. But this fury only lasted for half a day, as the sound of prisoner cages rattling along the road woke them out of their reverie. Seeing some of their partners inside the cages in miserable conditions, all of them immediately kept quiet out of fear. Some of the weaker ones even vomited out their dinner from the previous night. Escorting the cages was a group of black-robed people, all tall and sturdy, looking like steel towers. Their bodies exuded a cold-killing intent, their eyes looking like bottomless pits that could devour anyone whom they looked at. It gave everyone the shivers when they cast their eyes on them. This was especially so given that inside the car was actually seated the adopted son of Duke Ling, the fourth important person in the family, Ling Kong. This gave everyone a sense of danger to themselves. Everyone was shocked beyond words seeing the plaintive look of the person who used to hold great authority and decide life and death. All of them only agreed on one point: the Ling family was undergoing huge changes. Ling Tian's people could be said to have perfect timing, as all the prisoners traveling from north, south, east, and west all arrived in front of the gates at the same time. A cloud of smoke rolled up from afar. The people with real authority in the Ling family were here. Following an order, all the horses let out a neigh and stopped perfectly at the same spot. The cloud of dust kicked up made it look like a heaven-obscuring sandstorm was passing by. Everyone was immediately splattered with earthy dust, but no one even dared to move to wipe it off or cough. Duke Ling dismounted from his horse and vigorously walked over. His eyes looked as though he was about to eat them whole. Those he stared at lowered their heads, unwilling to look directly at him. Good. A face of fury on his face, Ling Zan walked past one vehicle after another, the fury on his face becoming ever so apparent. He walked from bottom to top, and back to bottom. All he fixed his gaze on shrank away. "This is very good," Ling Zan hollered out loud in fury. Everyone flinched at the sudden outburst. "All of you are great people. So many people here, and many I even personally guided." Ling Zan had a mournful expression. "I, Ling Zan, or I should say the Ling family, what have we ever done to you? All of you were given the best of food and clothes, a life of luxury. I believe you do not pale in comparison to the other nobles from the aristocrats. All of you have a plot of land, houses, whatever can be given I've given. What the other aristocrats are mindful about, I've still given. Why? Why did you have to betray me? Why? Give me a reason. I want a reason." The white hair of Duke Ling flew wildly as his piercing shout filled the sky, echoing loud and without end. The grounds were eerily silent, no one dared to speak a word. Ling Tian sighed inwardly. His own grandfather was already nearing his 60s, but was still so emotional. He couldn't think how the Ling family was actually built up. If not for old Madame Ling, Most likely there wouldn't be the Ling clan name now, right? No one wants to talk? Ling Zan sorrowfully laughed. Good, then I'll ask all of you one by one. He stopped in front of the first cage, hollering, Du Zongzin. Raise your head and look at this old man. The man in question trembled, before burrowing his head even more. Ling Zan solemnly asked, Du Zongzin, this old man asks you. Remember that day, when your family of 3 was about to die of hunger by the side of the road? This old man couldn't bear it and took you under my wing, treating your wife's illness, fixing your son's leg. At that time, you were overwhelmed with gratitude, and swore to be loyal forever to me, even changing your name from Du Chihui to Du Zongzin, which meant loyalty. I still remember your words. From today onwards, this man's body only has a heart of loyalty to you, the family head. 20 years later, where has your loyalty flown to? Ling Zan's chest heaved up and down constantly. Du Zongzin, that's what you said that year. Du Zongzin, raise your dened head. Did you treat the words you spoke that year as nothing? Huh? Chapter 242, Sorting Out the Scum. However, that Du Zongzin did not say a word, lowering his head with 2 trails of tears flowing down. After panting for a moment, Ling Zan glared at Du Zongzin once more before walking to the second prisoner carriage. In this carriage, a middle-aged lady could be seen. From her silhouette, one could tell that this middle-aged lady was definitely a pretty lady. However, she was presently dispirited with a face full of dust and her hair all messed up. She no longer had her usual elegance. Looking at the lady in the carriage, Ling Zan bellowed, Yang Xian, what do you have to say? That middle-aged lady looked up and looked at Ling Zan with her lifeless eyes before replying in a hoarse voice, this slut knows that I have let you and the Ling family down. I have nothing to say and seek a swift death. Ling Zan nodded his head slowly as his gaze turned stern. Good. You actually dare say that you have nothing to say. Yang Xian, I saved you from the hands of a bunch of robbers who were about to gang rape you back then. Because you had the surname of Yang, almost everyone objected to keeping you with me. However, this old man took pity on you and kept you despite the disagreements. Today, after betraying me and the Ling family, you have nothing else to say? Following which, Ling Zan continued walking forward, not saying a thing as he walked past the carriages. However, the grief in his eyes only grew deeper with each step. Ling Tian had already got off his horse, following closely behind his grandfather. If his grandfather were to be overly agitated, things could get bad. Finally, Ling Zan stopped in front of a carriage with his burly body trembling slightly. His eyes were filled with hatred but yet pity, disgust but yet apprehension. In the carriage lay Ling Kong, foster son of Ling Zan, the 5th in command in the Ling family. Foster father, save me. Please spare me, Before Ling Zan could finish his sentence, Ling Kong had already begun shouting. Ling Kong, how has this father treated you over the years? Ling Tian could hear that Ling Zan's voice was already trembling. Perhaps it was out of habit, but Ling Zan still referred to himself as this father. Despite knowing that Ling Kong was a spy sent over by Yang Kong, despite knowing that Ling Kong was the culprit who almost caused him to have no grandchildren, despite knowing that he was a traitor, Ling Zan was still. Ling Tian let out a soft sigh. Perhaps the only reason why Ling Zan was so successful was because of his straightforwardness and kindness. Foster father's kindness towards me is like a mountain. This child dare not forget it. Ling Kong began to weep. It is just that this child did not have a choice and have let down foster father and the Ling family. Ling Kong sobbed bitterly, as though he was truly regretful about what he had done. Foster father, this child is regretful. From today on, I will never allow myself to be controlled by others. I am willing to be an oxen or horse for the Ling family. Chi. Ling Tian began to sneer. Ling Kong, after acting for more than a decade, I have to admit that your acting skills are really outstanding. fooling almost everyone in the family. I am curious, are you not tired? Even if you aren't tired, I am irritated by your act." Ling Tian shook his aged head. "It's too late. If you confessed to me before all of this old man would have definitely given you a path to live even if everyone in the family objected. But now, it is too late." Ling Kong then looked towards Ling Tian with a vicious and sinister glare. He then turned towards Ling Tian and shouted, "Foster father, you are being fooled. This brat is the one who is trying to lay a trap for you. Back then, I fed Chutinger, that slut, the air-severing grass, and it was impossible for her to conceive. Who knows where this little BSD road came from? Foster father, you must investigate the matter clearly. You must not fall into his despicable plans. The foundations of the Ling family." Peng. Before Ling Kong could finish what he had to say, the enraged Ling Tian had already sent his foot out, breaking the wooden grills of the carriage and kicking Ling Kong in the lips. Ling Kong then flew into the air with his mouth wide open as a mouthful of blood, with a few teeth mixed within it, sprayed out. When Ling Kong began shouting, "Old Madam Ling, Ling Zhou," and Chutinger could hear it clearly. A dense killing intent then shot out from their eyes. Who would have thought this scum would still try to frame Ling Tian before his death, sowing discord in the family? "Don't beat my father." From afar, an enraged roar could be heard. In the Ling family's troops, a fellow who was tied up like a dumpling struggled his way over. After walking a mere 2 steps, he was kicked ruthlessly by a guard beside him, smashing into the ground pathetically. He was Ling Kong's son, Ling Zhen. Ling Tian frowned with a sinister glare surfacing on his face. The last trace of pity he had towards Ling Kong disappeared completely, looking towards Ling Kong with disdain before walking away. Ling Tian looked towards the struggling Ling Zhen with a sinister gaze and said coldly, "Ling Zhen, you're pretty filial, eh? With just your filial actions, I can forget about all of our past grievances. However, you have to pay for the words you just said." Ever since Ling Kong saw his son, his whole body turned ice cold. Hearing Ling Tian talk to his son without a trace of emotion, Ling Kong's body began to shook as he seemed to have understood something. Ling Kong then began to scream out, "Ling Tian, one should pay for their own doings. This daddy here harmed you and your mother back then, but it has nothing got to do with Ling Zhen. Come at me if you have the guts. You little despicable BSD road, come and take care of this daddy, come." The corner of Ling Tian's lips curved up and he roared, "Bring Ling Zhen here." The guards acknowledged the order and grabbed Ling Zhen up like a little chicken, carrying him to Ling Tian effortlessly. Throwing Ling Zhen down on the ground mercilessly, Ling Zhen's face plunged right into the ground as his nose bled immediately. After Ling Zhen's body landed on the ground, his body slid a few feet and was a few steps away from Ling Kong. Seeing his son's pitiful appearance, Ling Kong felt as though his heart was being sliced up by blades. His eyes turned red as he let out a hoarse roar of rage, "Ling Tian, what do you intend to do?" Ling Tian sneered and shouted, "Both father and son forgot the kindness my Ling family showed them and conspired with the Yang family. Not only did they not repay the family head's kindness, they had the ambition of wolves and wanted to swallow my Ling family. They are both too sinister and cannot be forgiven. Today, I gathered everyone here to expose their doings and character, and I will sentence them to death." Ling Tian's gaze swept past the crowd with majesty, and everyone who his gaze swept past felt their soul shudder with fear ingrained deep within their hearts. Ling Tian then continued, "Everyone present here are the talents of my Ling family. Ling Tian hopes that the same thing will never happen to any one of you here. Everyone present should learn from this lesson." Turning around abruptly, Ling Tian faced the 2 guards who carried Ling Zhen over. With a cold smile, he said gently, "The both of you, put up a show for Ling Kong with his son. However, if Sir Ling Kong doesn't enjoy the show, the both of you will be in trouble. Ha ha ha." The guards then responded respectfully, "Rest assured young noble, we will definitely take good care of young noble Ling Zhen." We will definitely ensure that Sir Ling Kong enjoys a good show." Ling Tian burst out into laughter and walked away. One of the guards revealed a bloodthirsty excitement, stomping on Ling Zhen and flipping his face up to the sky. With a flip of his right wrist, a shiny dagger could be seen in his hands. He then chuckled and walked slowly towards Ling Zhen. "No. Don't!" Ling Kong roared out in desperation, looking at his son helplessly. A loud shriek could be heard, and all those witnessing the scene trembled. That guard used the dagger in his hand to slowly slice open Ling Zhen's clothes, piece by piece. However, he made no effort to control his strength, and blood spewed out every time he swung his dagger. Ling Zhen's body was completely restricted from being tied up, and he could only let out a pitiful wail. His usually suave face had already contorted from the pain, with a malevolent expression on his face. There were a few times where he almost fainted, but the guard by his side would take out a bottle of strong wine and splash it over Ling Zhen's wound. As such, Ling Zhen would quickly wake up from the pain and continue wailing. "Beast! All of you are beasts! Stop, I beg you! I beg you! Let go of my son!" In the carriage, Ling Kong was using his head to smash into the carriage's pillar, making ping-ping sounds. However, not a trace of cruelty could be witnessed in his eyes any longer. Replacing the cruelty was endless grief and begging. Ling Zhen had already turned around, not willing to watch any longer. However, old Madame Ling squinted her eyes and calmly observed the process without an expression. Chu Tinger had already buried her face in her husband's embrace, with her body trembling slightly. As for Ling Zhou, there was actually a trace of delight as he faced the bloody scene in front of him. Chapter 243, Exterminate Them All. Warning: this chapter contains detailed descriptions of torture. If you're squeamish, I suggest that you skip past those parts as fast as you can. You won't miss anything important. The moment Ling Zhou heard that Ling Kong almost caused the entire Ling family to lose their successor, he had the intention to make mincemeat out of him, so how could he still have a shred of pity for him? Ka. Next, the punishment squad member stretched out his leg and began to trample on Ling Zhen's fingers one after another. With every step, a clear sound of fracturing bone would sound out, much like popcorn. While doing so, he leered at Ling Kong, saying, "Sir Ling, young noble's bones are really well proportioned, hee. This popping sound is so addictive to hear, don't you think so? I believe when hearing this, you should also feel more relaxed, right? I've put on such a good show for you, I wonder if you could spare some compliments?" Ling Kong's body trembled, as he turned his head away in pain, unable to continue witnessing his son's mutilation. Little did he expect the other Punisher, who was bored out of his wits at not having his turn, would suddenly explode in anger at his actions. Stepping forward, the Punisher grabbed a fistful of hair and viciously pulled his head back up front, snarling at him, "You better look properly for your daddy here. This is a show we went to great lengths to put together. Sir Ling, so how could you miss it? It's alright if you don't praise us, but you actually don't even want to look." Under the intense pain, Ling Kong opened his eyes and was only greeted with the pathetic look of his son in a half-dead state. He finally couldn't take it and broke down. Through a haze of tears, he could faintly make out Ling Zhen's back, and his eyes flashed with a cunning light. He immediately yelled out, foster father, I beg you, please let go of Zener. All the mistakes can be borne by me alone. But Zener is still young. He didn't do anything wrong, all of this was done by me." Ling Kong then knelt in his prisoner cage, knocking his head continuously. The place of contact was rapidly reddening with his blood, and his voice was growing hoarse with all the shouting, "Foster father, please turn over and see, that's Zener. That's my Zener. You always hugged him when he was young, and both you and foster mother also pampered him. Foster father, are you going to be so heartless? I beg you, leave him a way out. I'm kowtowing to you now." Ling Zhen's sturdy body trembled violently for a moment, involuntarily turning around. His eyes were filled with unshed tears. Ling Tian inwardly thought to himself, "Looks like I went too far this time. If grandfather comes forward with a compassionate heart and requests Ling Zhen be given a way out, I won't have another chance to strike, and wouldn't that be leaving a huge tumor?" As such, he immediately sneered, "Ling Kong, if you were standing in my grandfather's shoes today, would you let any of us Lings go?" Ling Kong was stunned speechless by the question. If it were him, he would definitely not let any of them go. Even if he did, he would never trust the person, let alone anybody else. Ling Tian continued in an icy tone, "How dare you still have the guts to beg for mercy? I ask you, when you received the appointment from the Yangs and secretly infiltrating our family, did you think about when my grandfather saved your life? When you poisoned my mother and tried to cut off our lineage, did you think about how grandmother and grandfather brought you up? And did you think about the brotherly affection between you and my father, when you colluded with the Nangongs to topple us Lings? Did you even ever consider yourself as a member of the Ling family? Then there's the embezzlement at the Northwest Horse Ranch. Did you question your conscience even once? Has your conscience all gone to feed the dogs there? Now that your scheme has been exposed, you only know how to beg for mercy, but did you ever think of such things when you happily betrayed us? A person who completely loses his conscience doesn't have rights to justice and righteousness. To think that an unfilial, heartless and disrespectful person like you still has the cheek to live under the heavens." From afar, the audience that was listening to Ling Tian all started to cast a gaze of disdain towards Ling Kong. All of them had the same thoughts. This sort of person, who did so many unspeakably evil things, how could he even try to beg for forgiveness? Du Kling, who was halfway through turning around, shivered slightly and turned back once again, letting out a heavy sigh. Seeing Ling Zhan turn his back on them again, Ling Kong knew that he was out of options. Even his last hope was mercilessly crushed by Ling Tian's words. Viciously glaring at Ling Tian, he spoke with eyes filled with insanity, "Ling Tian, don't get too cocky, this old man will hunt you even in my death. When I die, my soul will follow you, torture and curse you. I'll personally make sure your bones are shattered, and your flesh chopped into 1,000 pieces. Just you wait, this old man's spirit is coming for you. Ha ha ha." Hearing this sinister and venomous voice, all the audience couldn't help but shiver in fright. The originally sunny and hot day suddenly seemed to have turned dark and cold, and coupled with the voice, everyone couldn't help getting goosebumps. Ling Tian guffawed in response. "These words might scare others, but I'm someone who came directly from the Yellow Springs. What a joke." He harshly rebutted, "Ling Kong, don't waste your effort. This young noble here will wait for you. Even if you become an evil spirit, this young noble also has ways to prevent you from ever reincarnating. Later, I'll make it so you have eyes but can't see, have ears but can't hear, have a mouth but can't speak, and have a body but can't feel. Ha ha ha, even if you become an evil spirit, you'll still be a crippled one. You better take the chance to properly appreciate your 5 senses and enjoy the show while you still can. I'll make your son into a big radish to pull, before flying him up like a kite. This young noble will then deal with you later after that." Ling Kong's face paled. He had long expected himself to die, even with 1,000 cuts or being split apart, but upon hearing Ling Tian describe the methods of torture, he too trembled in fear. Being part of the upper echelon of the Ling family, how could he not know what was pulling a radish as well as flying a kite? These were 2 of the most inhumane punishments available. What they meant by pulling the radish was actually to bury someone into the earth, then split apart the skin on his head and pour mercury in. Because of its properties, the dense mercury would flow from the head of the person down to their toes, and the only way this could be achieved was to split the person's skin from his flesh. When the mercury reached the person's toes, the person's skin would be completely separated from his body, and then the person would be pulled out of the earth without his skin, much like a radish. The most frightening part about this was that the person would be alive throughout the whole process, suffering not only excruciating pain but also an unbearable itch, and even after being pulled out, they would still be alive. Even a simple breeze that blew past them would feel like 1,000 knives cutting their body. As for flying a kite, that was to pierce a person's stomach with a barbed pike, lightly turning it a few times to make the intestines tangle around it. After that, the pike would be ruthlessly swung up, making the victim fly up in the air. The tangled intestines would then come out of the person's abdomen while they soared through the air, resembling a kite. If the person was sturdy enough, they could actually survive this, which led to it being an inhumane torture method. The two punishers let out a shout of acknowledgement, and with cruel smiles, started digging a pit. Looking at the two of them, it seemed like they were completely excited at the prospect of seeing blood. FK. A primal scream of fury came out of Ling Kong's mouth, and he vomited a mouth of blood before slumping down on the floor of the cage. Enough. Killing people is as easy as putting their heads on the ground. There's no need to go through such antics. From afar came the voice of Duke Ling. He turned around, then waved his hands weakly, let them leave with as little pain as possible. Ling Tian immediately obeyed, shouting, "Stop! There's no longer any need to dig." Putting his hands behind his back, he walked to the front before announcing, "Very sorry to all here, but this is the last moment of your life. You people need not speak. This young noble is also very clear on who enticed you, so there's no need for any interrogation. Right now, I wish all of you a good walk in the Yellow Springs." Pausing for a while, Ling Tian let out a cold smile. "I also welcome whoever wants to be like Ling Kong, and hunt me as a ghost. However, remember this, whether you want to be a ghost or reincarnate, you had better not make me as your enemy. It's just that, if you want to reincarnate, with your crimes, you probably have to wait for a few lifetimes, as such, so long until then." Ling Tian no longer tarried, raising his hand and dropping it down swiftly, at the same time a sound like thunder blasted out of his mouth, "Kill." Chapter 244, Father and Son Bond. On the way back, Duke Ling was dispirited to the point he couldn't ride on a horse, so he sat in the carriage as well. Ling Tian knew that while he had taken care of the hidden danger in his Ling family, his grandfather was also thoroughly heartbroken. Ling Zan had never schemed against others and would treat people with sincerity. He was a straightforward person who valued the relationships around him. Of the many people they had taken care of today, there was actually quite a large group of them who were personally groomed by Ling Zan. They were his brothers of many years. Especially Ling Kong, he was Ling Zan's treasured foster son. The betrayal of all those people had been a hard blow to Ling Zan, who knew when he would be able to cheer up. Perhaps he would never be able to fully recover from this blow. Ling Tian and Ling Zhou rode on their horses with worry in their hearts, not saying anything to each other. "Father, in regards to the families of these people, how you think we should take care of them?" "We can't." Ling Tian broke the silence first. While he had a plan in his heart, he should still show his father some face. Ling Zhou's burly body was firmly seated on the horse as he looked at his son with a complicated gaze. "There isn't a need to continue, I understand that principle. You can just take care of the matter yourself and there isn't a need to ask me. Didn't your grandfather hand over all authority into your hands?" After the matter of the traitors had been settled, Duke Ling discussed the matter with old Madame Ling for a moment. Then, he announced to everyone in the Ling family that everything in the family would be taken care of by his grandson, Ling Tian. In other words, he was already announcing that Ling Tian would be the family head. It was just that he didn't hold a ceremony. It seemed that Ling Zan and old Madame Ling needed to take a break. However, the strange thing was that Ling Zan never discussed this matter with his son at all before announcing the matter. He then didn't bother giving an explanation and even ordered that no one was to interfere with Ling Tian's actions. The meaning behind his words was simple: apart from the two elders in the family, Only Ling Zhou and Chu Tinger would interfere with Ling Tian. However, Chu Tinger would never go against the actions of Ling Tian. As such, Ling Zan's words were as good as spoken to Ling Zhou alone. Ling Tian naturally understood what this meant. With all of his actions, especially the fact that he no longer concealed anything from his family, Ling Zan, old Madam Ling, Ling Zhou and Chu Tinger could already feel that Ling Tian was hiding a huge ambition. Of course, this was done intentionally by Ling Tian, since his family members might be unable to accept this if it was revealed too suddenly. However, Ling Tian's ambitions were obviously opposed to Ling Zhou's loyalty. It was something that was completely irreconcilable. If Ling Tian were to act in the future and Ling Zhou chose to stop him, the best timing would definitely be missed. As such, Duke Ling gave such a strange order. At this moment, Ling Tian could tell that his father was a little bit displeased. Thus, he said with an apologetic smile, "Father, no matter what, I am your child. How can I not seek your advice on things?" Ling Zhou's face was calm as he turned around and looked at Ling Tian in the eyes. However, his eyes were filled with complex emotions. He then said slowly, "Actually, when you established your Ling family courtyard 8 years ago, I had the thought of sending our 30,000 men to flatten the Ling family courtyard. Then, I would ground you at home for life." He then laughed bitterly, "But as I thought about it, I just couldn't bear to do so. You are my biological son after all. You are my only son. No matter what you decide, I can only choose to support and not oppose you. If I were to treat you with enmity, how would you be able to live with your actions?" Ling Tian was greatly startled. Looking at this boorish-looking father of his, Ling Tian never imagined Ling Zhou to have such sentimental thoughts. His heart was completely stirred, and he was at a loss for words. If his father really chose to do that back then, what would he have done? Conceal his strength and bide for time? Or? The sound of the horses' hooves was rhythmic with their words being drowned by the commotion by the crowd. While Ling Zhou's words were spoken softly, it resounded like thunder in Ling Tian's ears. "While I am a boorish man, I have fought countless battles and lived in an army camp for all my life," Ling Zhou said with a self-mocking laughter. "Even if I am foolish, how could I not tell what the Ling family courtyard was built for? What kind of men were inside, what the large plaza was used for? Or perhaps, what kind of men they could be used to train? As a general who has spent my whole life in the military, I was able to tell with a single glance." "Father, then why did you?" Ling Tian wanted to ask. However, Ling Zhou ignored him and looked towards the dust cloud in front of him and said, "As such, I have only visited the Ling family courtyard twice in the past 8 years. Every time I went to the courtyard for a visit, I would bring a large number of officers with me, stopping before I entered the front of the courtyard. Then, I would fly into a rage and give you a good scolding before leaving. This is so you would slowly become the biggest laughingstock in the army. This was also why I would always scold you in front of big groups and ensure that the whole city knew the reason." Tenor. As he said that, Ling Zhou looked at Ling Tian silently with a smile in his eyes. "It isn't easy to be a silk pants. These few years, I know that you have been rather tired of acting. Actually, I am also extremely tired. You put up your act and I put up mine." Ling Tian suddenly felt his nose turn sour and his eyes began to water. His throat also began to choke as though he had phlegm stuck in his throat stopping him from saying anything. At the same time, his heart also turned sour but was filled with happiness. So, this boorish father of mine who looks extremely uncouth had already known what I wanted to do. Furthermore, he actually used his own methods to silently support and protect me. All of these were things that Ling Zhou could never speak of, even to his own wife. He knew what kind of a risk this was. Therefore, he hid all of his secrets and worry he had for his son deep within his heart. He used his broad chest to endure this pressure alone. Just how could a boorish man like him do something like this? For the first time, Ling Tian felt a deep fatherly love from this boorish father of his. This was the affection between father and son. Despite Ling Tian having the experience from both of 2 lifetimes, he had the urge to dive into his father's embrace and burst out crying. All these years, I really wanted to hug you like when you were younger. Hug my precious son who I have always been so proud of. Ling Zhou said with a tinge of frustration. Father. Ling Tian could no longer hold back his tears. Ling Zhou smiled with tears glistening in his eyes. How can a grown man like you cry like that? Ling Tian wiped his tears away and smiled embarrassedly with warmth in his heart. He finally understood something. Even if he had the experience of 2 lifetimes, he was still a child in front of his biological parents. Ling Tian really loved and enjoyed this feeling. Shi Jiayu and the rest are your men, right? As though he felt as like it was an embarrassing thing to shed tears in front of his son, Ling Zhou changed the topic. Yes. Ling Tian replied. They are too bad. They are very good. Ling Zhou said with gratification, all these years if I didn't have them, I would have. Haze, it has been tough on those kids. Ling Zhou looked towards Ling Tian warmly. I am very satisfied that you would have such intentions. Your capabilities, wisdom, and talents are 100 times greater than mine. For your grandfather to hand the Ling family over to you, I am at ease. Ling Zhou then revealed a heartfelt smile. I am very satisfied that you would have such intentions. For your grandfather to hand the Ling family over to you, I am at ease. These words stirred up a huge wave in Ling Tian's heart. He almost began to burst out crying again. He had always thought that he was extremely intelligent for hiding his strength from his father. He had always avoided his father and even looked down on his father. However, his father had actually guarded him silently for so many years. Despite him assigning a few guards for his father, such a matter was almost insignificant to a general like Ling Zhou. However, Ling Zhou had still said, I am very satisfied. From the way Ling Zhou looked, it was as though he could feel his son's filial intentions from the guards and was completely overjoyed. The pitiful hearts of all parents in the world. Especially the parents of the secular world. Ling Zhou let out a laugh and his horse sprinted forward. In the dust cloud, Ling Zhou's voice could be heard. With regards to the family members of those traitors, you can make the decision. It is up to you if you want to kill or subdue them. But if you want my advice, I think that their existence would be a wild card and it is best to uproot the weeds by the roots. While I am not a wise man, I definitely understand such a simple logic. He was indeed an old general who lived on the battlefield. This advice of his was completely in line with Ling Tian's plans. Ling Tian unknowingly stopped his horse and looked at the majestic silhouette of his father in a daze. Chapter 245, Revert to Old Ways. That night, the Ling family hosted a magnificent family banquet, and both Ling Zhou and Ling Tian father and son drank themselves silly, to the point they lost consciousness. The both of them made Chu Tinger as well as Ling Chen so heartbroken that they kept crying. The 2 women were completely puzzled, just what was wrong with the 2 of them. They would hardly exchange a word for months, and now they're suddenly drinking wine together like best buddies? And they even got themselves drunk. Recalling their expressions, Chu Tinger and Ling Chen were fuming, yet secretly found it funny. Just when both of them started to see double, Ling Zhou had suddenly performed a military salute, before speaking. Ling Zhou patted Ling Tian on his shoulder, staring at him with his drunken eyes. Not bad, brother, you're not bad at all. This elder brother really looks up to you. Ling Tian was equally in a mess, replying, what's that nonsense? We're brothers, why should we look up to each other? Come, cheers. Ling Zhou, today's wine tastes good to this elder brother. I'll drink my fill. Ling Tian, HMPH. This wine This younger brother has much of it. Drink as much as you want. Ling Zhou, ha ha ha. Brother is really easygoing. Later, give this brother some of your wine. Ling Tian smacked his chest. No problem. Listening to their antics, the entire Great Hall went into hysterics. Old Madame Ling laughed so hard she coughed out the wine that she just drank, while Chu Tinger spat out the mouth of wine she had just taken on to Ling Chen, leaving her dripping wet. Ling Chen was laughing so hard she had unknowingly upended her cup, spilling the wine all over the table. Even the moody and depressed Ling Zan couldn't help but crack out a smile, kicking Ling Zhou's body. DMNUBSD Road. What nonsense are you spouting? He's your son. However, due to Ling Zhou's sturdy build, coupled with his drunken state, this kick had totally no feeling, only managing to knock him off his chair where he immediately started snoring on the floor. When the rest turned to Ling Tian, they unexpectedly found out that he had long planted his handsome face into a bowl of fish soup, steadily and slowing breathing. This was definitely the highest stage of drunkenness, silently fading into darkness. On the journey back previously, both father and son had a long talk about a lot of issues and had opened up to each other. Both were equally pleased. The son thought that having such a father was a blessing to him, while the father felt that having such a son was a matter to be proud of. Thus they were very happy and ended up drinking a little more than expected. However, on the morning of the second day, the happiness between the two was broken. Because he was too happy, Ling Tian had brought out his own wines for the banquet. The men were given the Luna fragrance and Hero's blood, while the women drank the Maiden's heart. Everyone indulged in the heavenly wines. However, on the morning of the next day, after freshening up, Ling Tian had, as per normal, sat under the grapevines to meditate and recuperate. In a moment, Ling Zhou strolled in, impolitely opening his mouth and saying, "Son, those wines that you took out last night, give your old man another 1,000 jars. I'm thinking of bringing them to the army for the lads to enjoy them." 1,000? Ling Tian jumped up as though he was a cat that just had its tail stepped on, even his voice went up by an octave. "Father, do you think this is a mountain pebble? 1,000 jars, even if you behead me I can't take out that much. Such good wine, it's good that I even let you gorge yourself at home for free, but to think you want to bring it over to the barracks to reward your soldiers. And to think you ask for 1,000 jars the moment you open your mouth." Ling Tian thought in fury. "Oh, then 500 jars should do, that settles it." Ling Zhou also felt that 1,000 was pushing it and generously reduced it to half. "I don't even have 5 jars, let alone 500. Ling Tian snorted in anger. To think that he was so touched that he broke into tears yesterday, but how come he reverted to his old ways so soon? Beast Road. Ling Zhou also flared up. "How many do you still have? Take them all out for your old man. There are only 2 left." Ling Tian nimbly drew out 2 jars, and spreading out his hands, he put on the attitude of a hoodlum. "I don't have any left. Not even a drop. If you want it, just take it. Else the deal is off. Want to take my wine to give to the troops of that dog-shit emperor? Forget about it. You little brat, do you think that you've all grown up now?" Ling Zhou grabbed onto Ling Tian's collar with a hand, sneering in anger. "If this old man doesn't beat you up today, you probably won't know I'm your father. I've raised you for so many years, but you are calculating with me over a few jars of wine." Seeing that the two of them were about to come to blows, Ling Chen stood by the side worrying helplessly, but she couldn't do a thing. On the other hand, Yu Bingyan was curiously looking at her prospective father-in-law with a look of disbelief on her face as she spoke. "Sister Chen, that's Ling Tian's father, the sky-bearing god of war? Ling Zhou? Grand Marshal Ling? This is..." Yes he is, Haze." Ling Chen tried to divert the topic but failed, and could only admit it. She couldn't help but feel embarrassed for Ling Tian. Between family members it would be fine, but you just had to do it with two of your future daughters-in-law spectating by the side. In the future, how are you going to be a fatherly figure? This was the saying, throwing away your face, throwing it all the way outside your country. Seeing that the situation was not in his favor, Ling Tian immediately wriggled free and made a break for it. Ling Zhou hesitated for a while, eventually picking up the 2 jars of wine and chasing after him, hollering all the while. Just like that, the Ling residence was plunged into chaos in the early morning. The chase of the father and the running of the son finally caught the attention of all the higher-ups. Old Madam Ling and Chu Tinger immediately came out to put a stop to it. After asking about the situation, they immediately berated Ling Zhou and severely warned Ling Tian never to hand over any of his wines to Ling Zhou, ever. Ling Zhou was only allowed to drink a few cups during celebratory occasions, and even had to go through approval by old Madam Ling. Ling Tian was all smiles when he heard that, nodding his head repeatedly like a hen pecking for food. As for Chu Tinger, she was even crueler. She immediately wrestled the 2 jars of wine away that Ling Zhou was holding in his bosom, making him so heartbroken he kept grinding his teeth. However, he had no say in this matter, and could only stare. Ling Tian had obtained an overwhelming victory this time. Just as he was delightedly going back to his little courtyard, a servant rushed up to them. Reporting to old Madam, Sire, Madam and the young noble. The Ximen family has sent an invitation over. Old Madam Ling glanced dryly at Ling Tian, probably some mess you created, right? Go solve it yourself. She then dragged Chu Tinger, together with the 2 jars of wine and left the scene. Ling Zhou stared wistfully at the 2 jars being taken away and could only let out a long sigh. Seeing that the servant was staring at him, he snapped, "Whoever created the trouble should go solve it. So why are you looking at me?" After which he stared daggers at Ling Tian, "Little brat, you wait for this old man, see how I take care of you." Then he walked away looking like a rooster which was just defeated. However, this phrase of Grand Marshal Ling had been repeated for at least a few hundred times, but he never carried it out once. Ling Tian could only bitterly laugh and accept the invitation. Returning to his little courtyard, a faint smile hung on his mouth. "Young noble, what are you so happy about?" Ling Chen asked as she approached him with Yu Bingyan in tow. Yesterday, the 2 ladies had fled like frightened rabbits back into the carriage when they had heard the pitiful wailings and did not see the actual bloody scenario, so their mental states were particularly good. This was especially so for Yu Bingyan, who considered herself privy to the internal matters of the Ling family, and could already be considered approved by the Lings, thus she was in her own land of happiness. "Oh, it's because of this. Take a look." Ling Tian passed over the invite, and the 2 ladies huddled closer, craning their necks to take a look. Thus all talented heroes under heavens, converge like bright gems. The golden opportunity of a lifetime goes to them. Taking step by step for 1,000 miles, boiling tea at Smoky Thea. How much of a pleasure it would be if all heroes were to swap sword for pen to challenge me. I've long heard that young noble is well-versed scholarly, and creative in wit, truly a talent of sky-bearing. If I could get the young noble to grace me with his presence, and exhibit your graceful demeanor, I believe this scholarly meet would be enriched by 2-fold. Young noble has a refined temperament, which leaves us desiring to raise our heads to look at you as well as to hear your poetry. Yours sincerely, Junior Ximen King. Ling Chen read out loud, and before she had finished reading, both the ladies' eyes were already shining. "Hey! Brother Tian, it's a scholarly meet. Let's go, let's go." Yu Bingyan immediately stepped forward, grabbing onto Ling Tian's arm and swinging it back and fro. "I really want to see all the literary experts gather together and see how much poetry they can write that will be passed down for eternity." Ling Chen, whose hand was clutching onto the invite, also smiled sweetly at Ling Tian, the desire in her eyes apparent. Ling Tian could only shake his head helplessly. He already predicted that the scholarly meeting would be a hard-to-resist temptation for the two ladies, and he was right. He couldn't help but think, seems like poetry and songwriting are popular no matter which world we're in. No wonder those main characters from reincarnation books can have droves of females throwing themselves at them with just a sentence. Wait a minute. Does that mean that this young noble can also give it a try? Stroking his chin, he began to wickedly smile to himself. The two ladies by his side immediately got the goosebumps when they saw his smile. Chapter 246, Were You the One? Tian''G.T. Yu Bingyan looked towards Ling Tian. What's wrong with you? Why are you putting on such a perverse smile? Are you ill? Ling Tian snapped out of his daze and swallowed a mouthful of saliva before glaring at Yu Bingyan. Nonsense. How is this young noble perverse? Little lass, do not spout nonsense to ruin this young noble's image. Yu Bingyan pursed her lips and mumbled, You are at most only a few days older than me. Why do you always act like you are an old man and call me little lass? I am already turning 17. Right, Tian''G.T. I have asked you this many times already, just how old are you? Ling Tian twitched his lips. Why are you asking about this? You just need to know that I am your Tian''G.T. A little lass like you just likes these kinds of senseless nonsense. Am I not more talented than the other young nobles? Yu Bingyan's voice suddenly went a pitch higher. Sister Chen and I naturally know about your talents. However, it seems that no one else apart from the two of us knows about that. I want to let the world know that Tian''G.T. is the most outstanding person in the world. She then shook Ling Tian's arms and whined, Can I? Tian''G.T. Her whiny voice made Ling Tian shudder and he quickly raised his arms in surrender. Young noble Ling, it seems that you have received the invitation as well. Are you planning to attend the meeting? A gentle voice sounded from the entrance of the courtyard. As the three of them turned to take a look, they saw Zhou Yanzu standing there. She was dressed in a light yellow dress, standing by the entrance with a slight smile as her dress fluttered slightly in the gentle breeze. A trace of shock flashed past Ling Tian's eyes. It's you? Ms. Zhou, why are you here? Yu Bingyan, who was excitedly waiting for a reply, spotted the trace of surprise in Ling Tian's eyes. She then couldn't help but grunt silently and stomp her foot lightly in frustration. As Zhou Yanzu looked at Ling Tian, a complicated expression could be seen on her face. It seemed to contain a few traces of disgust, but yet a few traces of surprise and disbelief. After Ling Tian shocked the whole sky-bearing city, how could the Zhou family not know about that? From then on, they all knew that Ling Tian's real strength was unfathomable. It turns out that the words of Zhou Fenghan were completely true. Originally, it wouldn't matter if Ling Tian's martial arts were at a profound level. To the Zhou family who believed that money could do anything, Miss Zhou would definitely not place Ling Tian in her sights if he was just a boorish and straightforward man. But in just a few days, the Ling family made a lightning-fast move to form an alliance with the Nangong family and wipe out all the traitors in their midst. The strength of their Ling family was still rising, and the authority of the family had actually skipped the god of war and goddess of fortune, landing right in the hands of Ling Tian. How could she not be surprised? Ever since he was young, Ling Tian had the title of #1 silk pants in sky-bearing. Just how much tolerance would he require to bear with such a title? At his young age, he was actually able to tolerate the disdain of the world despite being more talented than his peers. Just what was his motive? How would he be able to endure all of that without having an ambition? Now that the heroes of the world were gathering in sky-bearing, it was the time for the storms to brew, and Ling Tian actually chose to reveal his strength at this moment. Just what was his motive for doing that? Why didn't he continue concealing himself further? After seeing Ling Tian today, countless complicated emotions filled Zhou Yanzu's head. She could already vaguely feel that despite the fact that this dean in front of her usually put on a calm face, there were definitely countless of secrets hiding behind that calm facade. Now, Zhou Yanzu had the urge to uncover all of his secrets to see just what was going on. With regards to Ling Tian, Zhou Yanzu was filled with curiosity. However, Zhou Yanzu was indeed the strategist of her generation. She quickly readjusted her complicated emotions and lightly tapped the white invitation in her left hand. With a smile, she said, "This little sister has also received this invitation. However, I am afraid that I will make a fool out of myself, and I am extremely anxious. I never expected Sister Ling Tian to be talented in many ways, and she is like a scholar amongst us females. How can I bear to not use a talent right in front of me? I would like to invite Sister Ling Tian to attend this meeting with me." Ling Tian replied with a smile, "However, I have also received the invitation and Ling Tian would naturally go with me. For a housewife like her to not accompany her husband but go to the meeting with another lady, isn't it a little inappropriate?" Zhou Yanzu let out a grunt of frustration. Ling Tian was a fairy-like being but was actually reduced to a mere housewife by Ling Tian. Zhou Yanzu felt extremely disturbed when she heard that and felt indignance on Ling Tian's behalf. She then couldn't help but ridicule, "Oh, it is this little sister's mistake. I originally thought that with your great talents that young noble Ling wouldn't receive the invitation. Who would have thought that the scholarly meeting was able to invite a grandmaster like yourself? It is indeed amazing." The meaning of her words was simple. "I never imagined that an incompetent silk pants like you could also receive the invitation for a scholarly meeting. This is just too amazing." While Zhou Yanzu knew that Ling Tian was not a simple silk pants, was wiser than his peers, and had unfathomable martial arts, she didn't think that he would be able to excel in the literary arts. After all, just how many people would be talented in both martial and literary arts? The three of them were naturally able to understand the sarcasm in Zhou Yanzu's words. Ling Tian was expressionless while Ling Tian revealed a trace of frustration in her eyes. However, she was after all trained by Ling Tian for many years and had a strong control over her mental state. Thus, the flash of frustration was quickly concealed, and she regained her cool. By the other side, Yu Bingyan couldn't take the sarcasm in Zhou Yanzu's words. While the Zhou family was the #1 financial magnate in the world and was extremely powerful, how could a mere financial magnate be compared to the #1 martial family, the Yu family? While Zhou Yanzu was the princess of the Zhou family, Yu Bingyan was also the only princess in the huge Yu family. By just comparing their statuses, her status would definitely be higher than Zhou Yanzu. Thus, how could she endure someone ridiculing her sweetheart in front of her? With a cold sneer, Yu Bingyan said, "With Ms. Zhou's looks and talents, there would definitely be many flower protectors who would be willing to go with you. Do you still need Sister Chen's accompaniment?" Her words were rather crude, ridiculing Zhou Yanzu for having the intention to show off. However, Zhou Yanzu was not angered at all as she smiled. "This little sister is just an ugly individual. How can I be compared to the little princess of the Yu family?" Ever since she came to Skybearing, Yu Bingyan had always appeared with her true appearances concealed. None of them had seen her true appearance before, and even Ling Tian was not an exception. For Zhou Yanzu to retort in such a manner, it was no different from her ridiculing Yu Bingyan for being ugly. How could Yu Bingyan not read the intentions in her words? Her eyes turned red from anger as she let out a snort and entered the room, not coming out again. Ling Tian's face turned chilly as his gaze swept over Zhou Yanzu's body coldly. After she began to grow uncomfortable from his gaze, Ling Tian said, "Miss Zhou has inherited great looks and wisdom from your parents, but they should not be compared in such a manner. Not only are the words a pollution to our ears, it is also polluting your own tongue. Ms. Zhou should mind your words." Zhou Yanzu's face turned red as she said apologetically, "I went too far just now, I'm sorry." After she said the words, she felt as though her words were a little too much. If Yu Bingyan's original appearances were really as such, her words would be far too damaging to Yu Bingyan's self-esteem. Being scolded as ugly in front of her sweetheart, what lady in the world would be able to endure that? Ling Tian never imagined this little missy who had been pampered since young would actually know how to apologize. He was shocked for a moment as he glanced at her again. He then said calmly, "Forget it, does Miss have anything else for me?" Ling Tian's words were already hinting for her to leave. If not for Zhou Yanzu apologizing, Ling Tian would have probably sent her out immediately. Zhou Yanzu felt as though she didn't have the face to stay any longer and said, "When young noble Ling arrives at the Smoky Thea Tower for the meeting, you can find me at the bright light chamber where the Zhou family is staying at. This little sister will take her leave." While the Smoky Thea Tower made arrangements for the various great families, she never saw any special arrangements made for the Ling or Ying family. If that was the case, wouldn't Ling Tian have to squeeze with the crowd? Thus, she invited Ling Tian to her Zhou family out of goodwill. After she had said those words, she took a small bow with a smile and wanted to leave. Ling Tian looked at her back view with a smile which didn't seem like a smile and said calmly, "Thank you, Miss Zhou, for your kind intentions. However, the Heavenly Fragrance Chamber belongs to the Ling family." It was actually the Heavenly Fragrance Chamber? The Heavenly Fragrance Chamber which was never open to the public. Originally, Zhou Yanzu thought that the Smoky Thea Tower allowed the various great families to stay because of an order from the imperial family of Skybearing. Or perhaps, the imperial family paid the Smoky Thea Tower to allow the various great families to stay for free. After all, the various great families will be staying in Skybearing for quite a period of time and the amount of money spent would be great. As such, the Heavenly Fragrance Chamber which had never been opened up should definitely be saved for the imperial family. Who would have thought that it was actually reserved for the Ling family? If that's the case, where would the imperial family stay if they were to participate? What would the Ling family's actions then mean? That they were above the imperial family? Just when Zhou Yanzu was about to speed up, she suddenly stopped. With her back facing Ling Tian, she asked softly, "Young noble Ling, that night. Were you the one?" These words of hers were extremely vague. However, being involved in the matter, Ling Chen and Ling Tian both knew what Zhou Yanzu was asking. Zhou Yanzu was obviously asking if Ling Tian was the one who saved her back then. Zhou Yanzu waited for a moment and didn't hear a reply. Turning around, she realized that there was no one behind her anymore. With a complicated expression, she bit her lips and thought for a moment. After stomping her feet, she then left the place. Ever since the ancient times, literary arts were first and martial arts second. The Ximen family's scholarly meeting had incited a huge wave of excitement in the city. Not to mention the various talented young nobles and Miss, even Ling Jian sent news from the Ling family courtyard that the few brats there were interested to watch the event. After Ling Tian received that news from Ling Jian, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry while Ling Chen held on to her sides while she died from laughter. "You guys are a bunch of assassins, why do you want to join in the fun for a scholarly meeting? Even if you guys know how to read and write or have some literary sense, you guys are still far from joining a scholarly meeting, right?" Chapter 247, Bing Yan's True Appearance. However, Ling Tian understood the hidden intentions of Ling Jian and gang. That group merely wanted to take this opportunity to recognize all the talents of the different aristocratic families. Under Ling Jian's constant nurturing, this group had long taken all other aristocratic families as enemies to be purged in the future. To have such a chance to observe them closely, this would allow them to commit their future targets to memory, which would save them a lot of time and effort in the future. Thus, Ling Tian didn't object to their request, but added a condition: if anyone appeared wearing that deadpan face which they used for killing, he would kick them out with his foot. Even if they didn't know how, they had to try. As for this scholarly meet by the Ximen family, Ling Tian had great expectations for it. The moment everyone was to gather together, which families were working together, which families had formed alliances in secret, who was the outstanding talent of their generation, and any sort of spiders' threads and horse tracks would be clearly seen by Ling Tian. Furthermore, he had that scrupulous and intelligent Ling Chen beside him. As for the Ximen family, this was probably planned a long time ago by them, given that Ximen King was a fame seeker. Since they had suffered a disadvantage, they would definitely have to regain some sort of face, and also pull Ling Tian down by exposing him as an unlearned and barbaric silk pants. For someone who had killed Ximen Zhang, this would also allow them to vent some of their frustrations. As to whether the Ximen family had another plan in mind, Ling Tian was not aware. Thus, he could only play it by ear. However, just for precautions, Ling Tian sent an order to Gu Ziyan, telling her to scrutinize every single dish that would be carried out, including using a silver needle to dip in every single vat of wine before sending it out. Ling Tian had a premonition that the Ximen family would not let the matter of him killing Ximen Zhang go that easily. Furthermore, with the two countries always warring against each other, would it not be better for the person who struck first? Ling Tian held on to his chin, secretly thinking to himself. In the morning 3 days later, a cool breeze brushed past, and little clouds dotted the sky. A perfect day. Ling Tian lazily stretched and sat up on his bed, touching beside him out of instinct. However, his hand hit the empty air, then he realized that the Ling Chen who would typically curl up like a kitten beside him had disappeared long before he woke up. Being a person of two lives, Ling Tian was not only well-versed but also had unceasing demands. Having been tormented by him the whole night yesterday, that last Ling Chen should have been sleeping like a pig today. So why had she woken up so early? The moment he opened the doors, a cool breeze flowed in. On the east, the clouds were stained red, the sun was already rising. In front of his grey prax, two ladies in white robes were standing side by side, gossiping about something. A hint of a smile surfaced on Ling Tian's face as he looked at the backs of Yu Bingyan and Ling Chen. It was unknown as to what the girls were so animated about. Could it be that the scholarly meet actually had such great influence on them, that the both of them couldn't sleep at all? Thinking to this point, Ling Tian could only cough out loud and jest, "This is only a scholarly meet, why are the two of you so excited?" When the two ladies heard his voice, they turned their heads towards him simultaneously. Ling Tian felt himself growing dizzy from shock. In front of him were two heaven-toppling beauties, the right being the Ling Chen that he was so familiar with. But who was this peerless beauty on the left? Why did she look so familiar? Dressed in a simple and elegant white robe, her entire being practically radiated purity like fine jade. There was a light green sash around her waist and hung on it was a purple jade ornament. Whenever she moved, the ornament would refract the colors of the rainbow, enshrouding her in a halo. Her hair was like mist, lightly folded up and pinned to the side with a simple jade hairpin. On the hairpin was embedded two large pearls the size of a fingernail, brilliant and lustrous. Other than that, she didn't have any other accessories, exuding a simple, elegant and pure image. Her gently curved eyebrows looked like willows blown by the wind, and together with it were a pair of shrewd eyes, profoundly deep like a calm lake. Below her sharp nose was a small cherry-red mouth, and it was parted in a half-smile, with pristine white teeth peeking out, moving even the most refined gentleman. Flawless skin as though sculpted from the finest jade, but retaining its delicate beauty, tracing down to her swan-like neck, her thin shoulders all the way down to her tiny waist, she looked like a sculpture come to life. She exuded a pure and holy air, as though banishing all thoughts that men would have to violate her, and with the light fog still present in the early morning, drifting lazily in the morning breeze, she looked just like an immortal fairy which had descended onto earth, but completely unable to mix herself amongst the mundane people. "You're Yanner?" Staring at the mischievously smiling female, his brain short-circuited, he was only able to stutter out this sentence after a while. Ling Tian doubled over in laughter. "Look at this, sister. I told you that he would definitely not recognize you." Yu Bingyan also giggled in laughter, her laugh sounding like tinkling bells. "Yeah, Tian''G.T is so stupid." That peerless beauty was actually Yu Bingyan. While Ling Tian had long known that Yu Bingyan would definitely not have below-average looks, but he couldn't verify it because the mask worn by her was specially designed to ward off spiritual senses. Men who looked at her back and side views would probably harbor dirty thoughts towards her, but Ling Tian could guarantee that all those thoughts would vanish the moment they stared at her true face. While Ling Tian was no womanizer, he had a love for beauty, and seeing Yu Bingyan's true face today gave him a sort of pleasant sensation, as though his spirit was being cleansed. HMPH. Ling Tian ultimately recovered his senses. "You two lasses wanted to prank me, but this young noble has already seen through your scheme. Yanner would always come to greet me in the morning. When was she ever so reserved towards me? The moment I saw your backs facing me, I already knew." While Ling Tian discovered the reason behind Yu Bingyan revealing her true image, he believed the actual reason was due to Zhou Yanzu insulting her, which made her unwilling to concede defeat and thus reveal her face to exact revenge. Right now, with the two ladies standing side by side, if Ling Tian were to be described as a slender and elegant daffodil, then Yu Bingyan could be considered as a magnolia beginning to blossom. Both ladies had their strong points, and neither could be said to truly have an advantage over the other. As they say, a woman will only doll herself up for the man she loves. Today, Ling Tian received the full force of that saying. Before the three of them left the house today, they were cut off by Chu Tinger, who had some instructions to give. But before she could talk, she received a shock. How had Ling Tian managed to get another heaven-toppling beauty by his side in the span of a night? It was only when Yu Bingyan had shyly called out, "Good morning," and that Chu Tinger realized this lady was actually Yu Bingyan. This was indeed the saying of when one gets to the mountain, there will definitely be a way up. She had been so worried about her son, but look at him, surrounded by ladies such as Ling Tian, Yu Bingyan, and Jia Yu. This was indeed the epitome of the blessed need not rush for things. She only vaguely heard her son make some succinct introductions, then drag the two ladies who had faces as red as a monkey's butt out of the door. Only after a while did she snap out of her stupor, but she found that she couldn't even see their shadows any longer. She gritted her teeth, inwardly scolding that brat of hers, but she suddenly started laughing to herself, excitedly running over to old Madame Ling's chambers to report the good news. "Mother, haha, tell you some good news," Chu Tinger joyfully spoke. "I don't need to worry about Danner's marriage anymore. To think that this kid is actually such a playboy." Old Madame Ling quietly sat and sipped her tea, her expression not even changing in the slightest. However, the corners of her mouth rose up in a mocking smile. "No need to worry? Good, Tinger, you're really smart. Let me tell you, this old woman already stopped worrying about his marriage at the age of 5. That day, didn't I tell you he was this old woman's good tenor, good grandson? To think that you as the mother only realized it now. How smart you are." Chu Tinger froze on the spot. When Ling Tian stepped out of the main door, he couldn't help but let out a roar of laughter. Ling Tian stared mutely for a while in shock, before she couldn't help but cover her mouth, her eyes narrowed to slits as she tried to control her laughter. Only Yu Bingyan remained as she was. When she had met Chu Tinger just now, she had the impression that she was the daughter-in-law meeting her mother for the first time, and up till now, she found her body burning hot with embarrassment. At the entrance of the Ling residence, 6 good-looking scholarly fellows were waiting. However, their actions were a little weird, constantly tugging at their sleeves, or arranging their headgear, as though they were extremely uncomfortable. The close-fitting robes made the 6 of them feel as though they had been chained up. In their hands was a paper fan, but the posture of them holding it made it look like they were gripping onto a sword. Seeing Ling Tian walking out, the 6 of them greeted in unison, "We pay respects to the young noble." At the same time, they squeezed out wizened-looking smiles on their faces. It looked as though chrysanthemums were blossoming on the faces of zombies, an unspeakable horror. This group of people was precisely Ling Tian and the 5 brothers. "Ah, Tian." Ling Tian laughed, before catching himself. "This is the result of your 3-day practice on how to give an elegant smile? You trained up 5, no, 6 including you, 6 smiles that look like bullshit?" Ling Tian's face was bitter as he replied, "Young noble, this is a tall order. It's not that I can't train, but this bunch. They. Ling Tian looked back at the 5 zombie-like faces behind him. "They do not even know how to smile." Chapter 248, Peerless Expert. "Bullshit. I think you are the one who doesn't know how to smile." Ling Tian scolded. "Just what should I do? With the way the 6 of them are acting, they are no different from a peasant farmer putting on a luxurious government official uniform and standing in the imperial court. Their luxurious clothes were just not able to conceal their lack of elegance. If Ling Tian were to bring the 6 of them in, others would probably think that he was here to ruin the scholarly meeting. At that time, they wouldn't need to talk about observing others, as Ling Tian would probably be revealing himself. In fact, it was Ling Tian's fault for asking Ling Tian to train the other 5 to smile. In his whole life, apart from being more relaxed around Ling Tian had never smiled to others before. Perhaps, it wasn't more than 5 times that Ling Tian's teeth could be seen when he smiled. For Ling Tian to expect him to train others to smile was just asking too much of him. However, Ling Tian didn't have a choice either. The 5 little brats were led astray by him. Apart from Ling Tian and Ling Tian, the 5 of them wouldn't listen to anyone else. Even Ling Chen had been angered by them until she cried countless times. As for Ling Tian, how was it possible for him to have the time to teach them to smile? Count on Ling Tian? It seems like Ling Tian didn't know how to smile either. Haze. Ling Tian let out a long sigh and the 5 of them lowered their heads in fear with a face full of guilt. However, they just didn't know what they did wrong. Thinking carefully, Ling Tian commanded them solemnly. From now on, Ling Tian pointed towards the crowd on the streets. "Every one of you has to greet every single person you see. Make sure you put on a smile. A friendly smile. Smile your way to the smoky Thea Tower. Each and every one of you has to smile to 100 people at the very least. If any of you were to create trouble or scare others away from your smile, there isn't a need for you to go to the smoky Thea Tower already. You can make your way back to the Ling family courtyard and you will be grounded for half a year. Am I clear? Tian, you especially. You're the worst." Ling Tian hollered. "Yes." The 6 of them lowered their heads in dismay, as though they were facing an insurmountable task. "Ready, set, go." Ling Tian waved his hands. The 6 individuals dressed as scholars then dashed out swiftly, grabbing onto a person each and trying to greet them with their stiff appearances. The next moment, the streets were filled with chaos. Ling Tian walked behind them slowly with a dark expression, ignoring the chaos like it has nothing got to do with him. Ling Chen and Yu Bingyan laughed to the point tears could be seen in the corner of their lips. They couldn't help but place a hand on Ling Tian's shoulders for support, laughing to the point they no longer had any strength. Laughing to the point that their sides began to ache. The head of the guards, Wang Tong, and a few other blood iron warriors led a few horses and walked behind Ling Tian. All of their faces were cramping up as their faces began to turn red and purple. While Ling Tian, Ling Chen and Yu Bingyan could laugh, the few of them could only hold it in, not daring to laugh at all. If the 6 assassins were to find out that they laughed, the 6 of them would definitely not hold anything back. While it was impossible for the 6 of them to kill Wang Tong and other guards, it would be impossible for the guards to escape a good beating. Only when it was nearing noon did the group of them finally arrive at the smoky Thea Tower. At this moment, Ling Tian and the 5 other brats were filled with an amiable smile on the face. However, the muscles on their faces were almost cramped up from smiling and their eyes slipping into a daze. At the same time, a look of helplessness and depression could be seen in their eyes. If they knew that this mission was going to be so tough, the 6 of them would probably choose to carry out an assassination thousands of miles away instead than come here. In front of the smoky Thea Tower, a large armchair could be seen with a gorilla-like third Master Yu seated on it. At the same time, his neck stretched out towards the crowd as though he was searching for something. In the corner, the staff in charge of receiving guests were hiding in fear as they looked at third Master Yu with fright in their eyes. From afar, Ling Tian could already see Yu Man Tian's messy hair and revealed a smile. Sending out his inner chi, he stealthily made a path in front of him and walked towards Yu Man Tian. All of a sudden, Ling Tian's sixth sense alerted him of a highly dangerous presence. At the same time, a powerful inner chi began to push back at the inner chi he sent out. Ling Tian was shocked as he stopped on the spot, imbuing his inner chi into his sleeves and dissipating the other powerful chi with a wave of his sleeves. In that moment, Ling Tian could obviously feel that be it the skills of the other party or density of his inner chi, the other part was more than a notch above himself. Even Yi Qingchen definitely couldn't be compared to this person hiding in the dark. If Ling Tian didn't estimate wrongly, the person hiding in the dark was definitely capable of being the #1 expert in the world. Just who was he? Ling Tian's gaze swept past the large crowd as he unleashed all of his 6 senses. In just a short while, Ling Tian had already searched his surrounding 100 feet but just couldn't detect anything. The skills of this expert were just too baffling. A light flashed past Ling Tian's eyes as he carefully searched every single person around him. Ling Tian spared no effort at all and his whole body began to tense up. It was as though he was a gigantic bow which was pulled taut, letting out an arrow at the first sign of something wrong. Searching his surroundings, Ling Tian just couldn't find anyone suspicious. If it was anyone else, he would have probably thought that it was a mere misperception from being anxious. However, Ling Tian wouldn't think that way. In both his previous and current life, Ling Tian had struggled at the edge of death far too often. He had only managed to escape death by relying on his acute senses. Ling Tian was sure that his judgment was definitely accurate. When he tried to create a path with his inner chi previously, the expert must have been near him. Due to the basic instinct of an expert, the expert immediately retaliated upon sensing Ling Tian's inner chi. Thus, Ling Tian was able to grasp that slight gap. However, Ling Tian could feel that this expert definitely didn't have any bad intentions, retracting his inner chi in the first moment and concealing himself completely. For him to release and retract his inner chi with such ease and carefreeness, the grasp he had over his inner chi was definitely at the state of perfection. While Ling Tian didn't want to create trouble, Ling Tian would definitely not let him off. For such a frightening character to appear in such a crucial period, how could Ling Tian not be careful? Finally, Ling Tian's inner chi landed on a green-robed man. The green-robed man had a head full of black hair and didn't look too old. It seemed as though it was acceptable for him to be in his 20s or 30s, but yet not impossible for him to be in his 40s or 50s. However, it also seemed possible for him to be in his 60s. When Ling Tian looked at him, he also raised his head up coincidentally. His eyes just couldn't avoid Ling Tian's gaze. When the both of their gazes met, Ling Tian realized that he didn't have the alertness and vigor of a martial arts practitioner. Instead, his eyes seemed plain as he looked towards Ling Tian with curiosity. As Ling Tian studied this green-robed man with his sharp gaze, he seemed to cower slightly from Ling Tian's gaze. From his appearances, this green-robed man just didn't look like anything special. He was an individual who would never be spotted if you threw him into the crowd. But for some reason, Ling Tian's gaze locked onto this individual after sweeping the crowd. Seeing how his acting was so genuine, Ling Tian sneered and walked towards the green-robed man while purposefully emanating an overbearing killing intent. Let me test him. Ling Tian came to that conclusion in his heart. However, Ling Tian wasn't completely testing him either. While Ling Tian was already half sure that this green-robed man was the hidden expert, Ling Tian wasn't completely sure. If he wasn't, it was very normal. After all, this green-robed man just didn't seem like an expert. But if he was, the strength of this green-robed man was just too frightening, and Ling Tian must find out who he was. But regardless of who he was, Ling Tian would definitely test him. In such a crucial time, such a frightening expert was a huge variable. Ling Tian didn't think that this mysterious expert would help him for no good reason. Ling Tian also didn't believe that this mysterious expert would willingly submit when he revealed his talents and strength. No matter who you are, as long as you continue acting, I will kill you without hesitation. Even if you are innocent, you can only blame your bad luck. In such a moment, Ling Tian had no qualms about killing the innocent. In chaotic times, human life was as worthless as grass. As though he could feel Ling Tian's overbearing killing intent, a trace of astonishment could be seen in that green-robed man's eyes. He then stood up straight, and in that instant, the green-robed man turned into a towering mountain which stood up proudly. While he wasn't tall, the green-robed man looked like he was looking down on humanity with arrogance. It was as though he was living in the clouds and the ruler of humanity. You finally stopped acting. Ling Tian sneered and made a weird signal with the hand behind his back. His aura also exploded forth as he sent out his aura like a gigantic tsunami. Ling Tian and the rest had already been startled by the green-robed man's imposing aura. But without receiving Ling Tian's signal, plus the fact that the green-robed man was just too unfathomable, Ling Tian and the rest didn't dare make any rash movements. After seeing the signal which Ling Tian gave them, they were all shocked. The six of them then stealthily spread out. While they seemed like they were blending into the crowd, they were actually picking the best spot to take action. The signal which Ling Tian gave to them meant, regardless the consequences, surround him and attack with your lives. Victory and defeat will be decided in a single blow, kill him at all cost.